Okay, welcome to Stampscaping 101. I wanted to use nature set number 6 here because a lot of people have picked this up, and a lot of people are picking this up after Stamp Wars 6 on the Nancy Stamps channel. They're new to scenic stamping. I've got to thank them, Stamp Wars, and all the participants in that. I don't know if they're called combatants in that situation with the wars thing, but I want to thank them for exposing a lot of new people to scenic stamping, and a lot of people are picking up this set as their first kind of scenic stamping, I don't know, component set, to use. But I wanted to come up with a lot of quick and easy types of applications of the stamps so that they can utilize them that way in addition to kind of the more layered types of toning and color applications that they used in Stamp Wars and that I use most of the time. But there's a lot of other fun ways to use scenic stamping stamps. Scenic stamping is not a technique. It's just a system of designs that when utilized together can form seamless scenes, okay? Now I just did one on some Star Dream lapis lazuli dark blue, and I stamped these components out in silver on top of this in this kind of slimline card. I learned a new term on that channel in terms of kind of an elongated format. But this is photo stamping here, and this is just prints on standard photo print paper. I got these ones printed at Costco. I do have a lot of these prints, or all of them, on my Flickr account that you can download for free and just stamp over the top of them. I've taken a lot of clouds, and I just went out one day and I just took a bunch of pictures of a bunch of different clouds. One thing that I did do on most of these, not on this one right here, but on a lot of these, what I did was I decreased the saturation of the photos so that it makes them a little bit more universal as something to stamp over the top of with my components, okay? The more kind of general, and I don't want it boring, but kind of the more kind of, I don't know, generic the background is without a lot of hard contrasts, the more universally they can be used with your components, okay? So in other words, if I had, let me see, I saw one in here that had really high contrast, like this one right here. Okay, if I stamp this cabin right here, if you can see that, if I stamp that right over this dark area, right, you're not going to be able to see it because it's dark in the background. I'm saying black over this black area, that's not going to show up. Okay, so the more kind of just generic kind of background, kind of value changes you have, the more universally you can use your imagery over the top of it, unless you have something like this, which is a solid tree. This could be used over anything. It could be used in here. You can have it, these black impressions over the front of this one or something like that. I don't think you could stamp it in light green or something like that with a dye-based ink and stamp over that without all that showing through, okay? Might be able to emboss on it or something like that, and that would be fine. But I hope you get the kind of the idea of that, So we have texture, but it's not so kind of defined in the background with hard edges and big changes in contrast values that it affects what you stamp over the front of it to the degree that you can't see the forms of the stamped images anymore. So, on a lot of these, what I did was I decreased the contrast. In some cases, I even remove the color so that it remains more neutral, so that I don't have something like a hard blue down here. And if I wanted to stamp, a green tree over the front of that, over the top of this kind of lighter gray, it would be fine. Where do you get these? You can download them from my Flickr account. You can look up sunsets, twilights, whatever, sky photos, or cloud photos. Look it up in the search engine. And you can download these for free, or you can go out with your, your phone and take photos of the sky and print them out. If you have, a lot of people have, packets and packets of photo paper that, you haven't used from 10 years ago when everyone was buying printers, and kind of one of the perks to the printers was that you get a free packet of, Epson glossy photo, 8.5 by 11 photo paper, and then just never used it. Okay, let's see what we can do here. Let's grab a couple of these. These are so fast and easy to do. Let's get a couple different ones here. Let's go with this kind of grayscale one. And this one that has a little bit more blue in it. Okay. All right, now what inks do you use on this? Dye-based inks, okay? Plain pigment inks just don't dry on photo paper, okay? I don't know if you've ever tried that before. I think the Brilliance inks would because they're designed to dry on non-porous surfaces. So with that emulsion coating that you have on papers like this, okay? I don't know. I've found that they just don't dry. You can try it, or you can emboss, okay, if it doesn't dry for you. Okay, but dye-based inks, I don't know. When someone first started doing this, the guy's name was Randall Curry in the 90s, okay, mid-90s. He started stamping on top of photo paper, and I thought, that's not gonna... Just plain ink works on that? You know, I would have thought it would have wiped off, but this photo paper and that emulsion coating accepts the inks just fine, and they do dry on there just fine, okay? But look at that. I mean, that is a beautiful, crisp impression of that. All right? Let's do... Okay, now let me... Instead of doing just one scene at a time, let's just show you how fast these can go. There's prints out there of, like, oceans with a sunset or something like that up top. Or a twilight. You can just stamp this right on that horizon line of a sunset and then the water down here, or of a lake or whatever. You don't want a bunch of, you know, if there was a bunch of trees over here like that, if you took a picture of a, you know, something on the other side of the lake, then you can stamp this down in the water or something like that. But remember, if you're stamping this open rooftop with a bunch of trees in the background already in the photograph, those trees are going to show right through that. So just be mindful about your placement of your prints if you have kind of darker objects in the photograph, okay? It's better if you have kind of just a kind of a generic, you know what I mean, open sky, but water, you know, if water has a horizon line, you can do that. Let's do this one. You kind of have to decide which way's up and which way's down when you're doing this too. Okay, so let's go with this one over here maybe. Let's go portrait and landscape in terms of the format of this. Okay, I'm using Marvy ink. Some inks out there are a little bit thicker, like say Memento Black. It might take longer to dry. Marvy is a thinner ink, so it tends to penetrate surfaces a little bit faster. Okay. And let's see if we have room for this ledge right here. Ledge could be used in the background of this too. It's like a back little sloping hill or whatever, granite hill. I tend to use it in the foreground, maybe a little bit more than I do as a background, but you can put it in the foreground. And by the way, if you bought ledge and or this set here, I don't know. I'm trying to find some blank. I don't even have some glossy cardstock right next to me. I always do. But I've been using metallics so much. I just wanted to show you how this ledge can really stack here. Okay. See, doesn't that look fantastic? And with landscape stamping, I mean, I stamp it over those clouds like that. And it's not like, oh my God, there's a bunch of clouds in that rock. It doesn't show up, you know, it doesn't read that way at all. Okay. See my ledge right there? I just overlapped it with the first impression. You don't have to mask off or anything. You just overlap by about ½ inch or so. And the way that I've created my transitions, I've tried to create all my transitions, meaning how something transitions out to the edge of the card. I've really spent a lot of time and years kind of figuring out kind of the right density on the edges right there, so that you can just overlap freely and not worry about kind of this jigsaw puzzle type of look to your scenes where, you know, you can tell where one image ends and the other one begins, or where one impression ends and the next impression begins. Okay. Oh, okay, here. I have a piece of glossy right here. Let me show you just how that ledge comes together right here, okay? Alright, so just go like this here. Okay. And You can overlap it over here. Let me just overlap. I'm just doing this off-center just to make a point right here, okay? And don't write in the description, oh, you make that look so easy. This is pretty easy right here. This is overlapping like this, like an inch, okay? I wouldn't go like 4 inches or something like that, but see how this comes together? And let's say you wanted to do a whole frame around something. Now this is extreme, okay? But just to show you that you can do something like this, let's say we're in a cave, okay? Just to show you that you can do that, okay? But one of the big things right here is I'm not trying to go edge to edge, okay? Exactly. All right? Now that's extreme, all right? But there you go in terms of the overlapping, okay? So overlap freely. You got to break out of this kind of idea of really super careful placement. I mean, you can place carefully, but it's not needed, and it's not really conducive to the overall spirit of the blending of imagery and the seamless aspect of using your stamps. Okay, so let's go with this tree here. Now you can, I mean, this is fairly open right here. I mean, if you want some green on this tree, you can color it with a dark. I would do it with a dark green, though. Don't with a super light green. But I'm just doing this in black right here, just for the sake of expediency, okay? Let's go with some trees here, like so. Look how beautiful the prints are, though, on this photo paper, okay? Okay. Trees in front of the rock, right? Right here. Let's put a tree behind the rock. Mask it off like so. Okay, don't over-mask it, or don't go right to the edge, okay? It's too much, and it's too, I don't know, it's too much of a hassle to be super careful, okay? Now don't, mask down here, I don't know, 1/4 inch, 1/8 of an inch, and it's not, doesn't have to be exact, but see that? Now you have a little bit of that tree on the other side of that rock, so you make use of your imagery in smaller portions to give yourself more value for your money, okay? I mean, this is like a big tree, a medium tree, and a small tree, but it's still the same tree, and that's what it's really good, right, about scenic component stamping like that. All right. So, we have our horizontal one here too. What are we? We're 13 minutes into this video, and I don't know, these scenes they're not done, but they could be. Let's use some of the reeds. Let's use some of the reeds and this tree and this one right here. Okay. Now there's other things you can do to this too, and I'll show you that. If this dries enough for me, I think it might. But I like to color on these too. Especially if, I love doing the autumn types of things and taking alcohol pens and coloring in here. It just tends to kind of fill out the scene a little bit more, but even just the black and white kind of component imagery on here without any additional effects is quite effective. And it looks, the ones that are photographs of twilights or sunsets, those are really, you can bring that element, that spectacular show of nature into your scenes. It's just that you're kind of creating something really a lot more specific when you use the types of imagery that you have in here. Okay, now, like I said, photo stamping, it's not just, it's perfect for scenic stamping, but let's say you have like a photograph like this in the background. If you, stamp some other components around it, it could be anything. It could say Merry Christmas, snap it right in the middle, and have like presents around there. And then you color your presents or whatever. It just, instead of using a white piece of paper, you have something kind of inherently, from a textural standpoint, color, etc., going on on your surface and you're ready to go. It's just like starting with scrapbook papers that are kind of, have some kind of print in the background. You're just starting with something that can be potentially a little bit more interesting than a white piece of, card. When you're dealing with white and cardstock, it's more customizable. When there's definitely something to be said for that. You can manipulate it in any direction you want. But there's also something to be said for expediency at times and just using something that's just inherently easier and more effective if you use it from, something that's just already inherent. Okay, so here's some of these reeds. When you use this reed stamp, don't smash it in the front like this, okay? And get those top parts too smashed down. These are really delicate areas up here. I mean, it's not precarious or anything like that, but where I'm putting my pressure is in this area right down here. And don't rock your stamp either, okay? So just flat, even impression pressure, okay? And that goes the same for this tree up here. Don't put a ton of pressure on that tip part, otherwise it's going to smash, okay? All right, so here we have this. It's a little bit more, I don't know, close to us. I think by putting those reeds like that, it brings us as a viewer closer into the scene. It makes it a little bit more intimate from an emotional standpoint, I think. When we're stamping scenic stamps, one of the things, or when we're stamping scenes, one of the things that you're doing with your viewer that can be a little bit different than a lot of other types of stamping. Other types of stamping, it's kind of a visual experience. They're looking at your pieces. But because we're stamping locations in scenic stamping, when you're doing something like this, it can be kind of this subconsciously transportive experience now. So by putting the shoreline in here, we have put ourselves into the scene, and we've given ourselves some place to stand on, to observe this scene right there. I think that happens on a subconscious level for both the people that are creating scenes and using these stamps like that, and the people that are viewing it. It's like someone might get that and say, oh, I'd love to go there, or I'd love to be in there right now, So that's what, it adds that little extra kind of aspect of kind of both the experience in creating and in viewing it as well. Okay, let me show you something right here too. All right, so this is just some trees in black, but let's stamp this out. Now you can manipulate this, play around with, greens and things like that too. I want to just show you this in terms of the concept of it. Let's stamp this out pretty good and get a lot of it off. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take my paper towel again and transition. This is what was different about, I was trying this on my last scene in my metallic inks, and doing this is really different with metallic inks, the Brilliance ones, because when I wiped it off, it was like I was wiping off everything because the ink is just inherently thicker. So what I'm doing right here is this is a second print, and I've transitioned this off from dry to wetter up here. This is like medium wet. So it should stamp out darker to lighter, and I'll show you where that comes into play when I'm stamping it over the silhouette of these trees here. This is the masking that you're going to only need to do. All I need to do is mask off my cabin because that part is open. These other trees here are solid black, so you don't need to mask them off. But let's see if we can kind of create some background trees in here where it transitions from dark to light and where it looks like they're farther back in the distance, okay? And there you have it right there. But see, it was a second impression, so it's not as black as this. But look at where I've transitioned it to light. It goes from dark to light, and it goes light right down here, so that I still get the benefit of this nice silhouette of these trees. But look at that, how it kind of, transitions from, impression to like nothing down here. You see that kind of lighter version of it? And see, this is really easy to do. You just have to kind of think in terms of values, and in scenic stamping, what that does is we're representing light, okay? light that reflects off more distant objects and comes back to you is, that light is being broken up with all the moisture in the air and things like that, and things in the distance become lighter looking. Okay, so I probably didn't need to mask this off, but I'll need to mask this off for this impression because I'm going right over the top of that cabin. No need to cut out a mask, out of a Post-it note or something like that. Just cover it up with a, paper towel like that, and that's fine, okay? See, so I'm stamping this, and it's going, I'm stamping it about, the bottom part is about right there. Things don't have to be perfect, or, I don't know how much of this I'm getting. I don't know how dark it's going to be. It depends on your lighting as well, so forth, okay? All right, now let's utilize that same type of thing. If you want to. You don't have to do this part either. It's just an option for you. Blot it off. Let's blot it off a couple times like that. And let's transition this a little bit like that. Okay? And let's create some reflections down here. Okay. One, two. I'm not someone that's a stickler to exact, it's like, oh, that tree is off a little bit. You know what I mean? If you're thinking about things like that, then, you can be more careful about, you can use a mirror stamp, where you stamp one of those things on those blank pieces of rubber, and then you stamp that out and it's a perfect mirrored impression. That's tedium to me. I don't think it's bad if you do it though, but I'm just not, not the type of stamper that really cares about something like that. Okay, but there you go. All right, so that is really fun stuff. Okay, is this dry enough for me to color yet? Let me test. It might be dry enough. I don't know. It would probably be better if I let these set up a little bit longer before I do what I'm going to do right now. But I think it's dry enough. I don't know. If I start going over it and it starts smearing like crazy, then maybe not. Okay, so anyways, let's see. Let's grab some alcohol-based pens, okay? I love using the alcohol-based pens with my dye-based inks because the water and alcohol do not mix, so my impression should stay true and not go back into solution. The water-based impressions go back into solution with the alcohol ink over the top of it. Now, I don't go too dark with these. I usually just do some slight embellishments. But let me get in here like this. Okay, now where do you color things like stamps that represent volumes, okay? They're tonal as opposed to like a rock like that, if you're coloring it in, if it's linear, you might just color the whole thing, okay? But what I do is the darker areas of these rocks, okay, what I'll do is I'll just come into it like this. It's a little bit wet still, but that's okay. And what I'll do is I'll just add some extra tone to it. Now, this won't blend like this, but the inks are still a little bit wet. I just re-inked this too, all right? But this is light enough to where I can come into this like this. You can almost use a blender pen too. And I'm just kind of adding a few extra volumes to these rocks in here, okay? So, if there's more tone in some areas, okay, you can see the light and dark in this rock right here, okay? See, this is darker down here, so I'm coming in with a very light pen. This is blue, a light blue. And see, I'm just adding this to those areas. So doesn't it look a little bit more round when you reiterate those light and shadow areas? See this back here in these rocks right here? I mean, I'm being real subtle right now because, like I said, this ink is really wet. Okay, right now. But I don't color in this whole thing uniformly. You retain the lights and darks and the volumes of the rocks, by just coloring in, you know, some of those darker areas of the rocks. And I've already kind of done that with that stippling and the tones that are in the design itself. Okay? All right, so, you know, that cabin could use a little bit of tan or brown in there. Let's not do that right now. I think you get the idea. But go with kind of your lighter tones. See, like this, I picked out some grays and blues in here. Now, if you're stamping a sunset scene or something like that, and you stamp, you know, some water down here, you can go in and color it in with those colors that are with, you know, inherently in the photograph. So I wouldn't be using blues and things like that if everything in the sky is yellows and oranges and reds and purples or whatever. I would use those types of colors. Okay, so let me show you something that's really fun too. And this is where I don't know, I just have a huge amount of fun in these scenes right here. I think this is light dry enough for me, but take your regular pigment ink, okay? Don't take the Brilliance, that just dries way too fast for this. And this is something that you all probably have at home. A cotton ball, Q-tip, something like that. Okay, I find the cotton balls work the best though. 100% cotton. All right, that just makes it so much easier. I've tried this one right here, which is one of those acrylic ones, unnatural fabric, and it just, like polyesters and things like that, wick inks away from you, right? They're not absorbent, okay? The cotton absorbs, okay? So it's like using the fundamentals of, I don't know, whatever fabric, the nature of fabric or whatnot. Cotton on a water-based media. This isn't, or, oh, I don't know, is this oil? I don't know. But it absorbs it, in other words. It's the natural, you know, natural fibers or whatnot. Okay? And I'll show you what I do with this. Okay, now we have this inherent kind of cloudy kind of look to this, right? It has that inherently in it. You know, clouds are moisture. So what I'm doing with this here, my Hero Arts pad is not so juicy right now too. So what I'm going to do is you don't want a big blob now, okay? So this is where everyone kind of, I don't know, they get gun shy about using this. Okay, now see mine is really quite dry, like that. See that? I'm just doing this on this darker paper so you can see what's happening. See how I'm kind of creating that glow? You don't want, here, let me just try to purposely really ink this up like crazy right here and do this, okay? And they're getting that type of mark, okay? We don't want that. So kind of ink it up and then kind of blot it out a little bit. Now, I purposely took too much ink, so let me get some of that out. Okay, now, imagine that you're applying makeup to like a 2-year-old's face or something like that, okay? You're not going to go like this on their face, okay? You're just going to lightly kind of dab it on. It's like cold pack cream or something like that, okay? And that's what we're going for right there. I mean, like, see, like 3 taps and you can't even see it, okay? Now, don't get impatient. This is what happens too. It's like, okay, people get it exactly where I want them to get it, and then they go like this and say, I can't see anything, and then they can go like that. You know? So just allow it to develop. It develops, and it's not a slow process by any means, okay? All right, now let's look at down here. See where this light is in here? All those kind of cloudy little looks like that? Let's bring some of that into this scene right here. Watch this cabin right here, and watch this kind of immersion into that cloudy type of look this can give to it. I think this looks good as is, and you can just leave it like that, but watch this right here, okay? Let's see, am I zoomed in enough here? Let me bring in this a little bit more. I bet you it takes 20 taps to get what I want here, okay? But that means control. Okay, that's 20. But see how that starts to change that value there a little bit? Maybe a little bit more, okay? Can you feel it? I mean, see, but it's like feel. Doesn't it look like, isn't that cabin kind of being isn't there an immersion into the um, environment now? See, it's like I'm bringing this kind of cloudy moisture out towards us now. You know, it's like in between us and the cabin. Doesn't it feel like that now? See that right there? How it's kind of sitting back into it. Here's what this cabin looks like without it. Okay? But look at that now. Now, I'm not going to do it over the whole thing. I think it looks kind of better. But look at this lake right here. See how that's just a straight print of it in black? Let's oscillate it. I like it better if you kind of don't go over everything, but you kind of have it here and there. But doesn't that look a little bit more dimensional now? Like that. And this is really easy to do. You just have to get, the right consistency and don't rush it. Don't People are used to getting what color they're going to get instantly with a pen or a pencil or something like that. But this is utilizing the media for different effects and pushing the potential of the medium, meaning you're doing a lighter version or a lighter application and a heavier application, meaning in this case it's kind of darker, and then the more I apply, because it's white, the lighter it gets. Okay, but look at that now. Doesn't that cabin look like it's kind of sitting in a bank of fog now? Okay, now look at these trees back up in here. See, there's a little bit of light in here. If I put this over here, it might really stand out because it's dark up there. Okay, see, I mean, you just wipe it off and it's a completely user-friendly experience. Now, remember how I stamped out those trees a little bit lighter? Let's put a little bit more light into them, like that. Now we've manipulated and changed even that one impression back there where it's a little bit different. Let's put some light coming from within those trees, okay? If you've seen my videos where I do those light beams, you can do it on photo paper as well. Okay, but let's look here in the foreground. I think this looks just fine as is, but let's put a little bit of fog. See this tree right here? It looks like something that's farther away than this tree right here, right? So let's put a little fog over it like that. See that now? See where it's more gray? So we've pushed kind of the distance, the visual distance now, like that. See these trees right here? Okay, that's the same value of gray right there, but let's just play around with it a little bit. See, let's put it down there like that. And see, it's so little that this is being applied at one time. It's not like, oh my god, I made a mistake, that looks terrible. You know what I mean? I can go like this. You know what I mean? It's no big deal because it's so dry on here, okay? So utilize that, to your effect, okay? And let's play around with this, and let's give this piece a lot of atmosphere. So what you're doing in this scene like this, we've taken this scene, and this is my theory on terms of what's happening in here. We have taken a piece that is just largely visual, okay? We can see all these items like this. But I think when you add this texture in like this, I think what this becomes is it becomes a little bit more kinesthetic looking. It's when we're adding this element in here that represents the space between the objects and us. Okay, so I'm putting fog in between, and you can feel fog. So from a visually kinesthetic standpoint, I think we've added that into it. There's a certain feel to this now. See that back in those trees? It's pretty subtle. Let me put a little bit more. This is more extreme here, but I just want to show you what that would look like. Okay, so you put a little bit that back there, and it's a little bit more distinct. You can have it as subtle as you want to. Okay, let me put a little bit more in front of this cabin right here. See, I'm just kind of building it up. I'm never putting kind of an opaque application of it. It's very transparent to translucent. Okay, see that right there? I just kind of did it over half of that cabin right there, but doesn't it feel like it's sitting in the scene a little bit more? And I think that's really fun. You can do a little, what'd be cool on this one is to take a little yellow alcohol marker and put it in that window right there where there's this warm light in there. Okay, now let's take a look at this one right here. This one's kind of, I left purposely didn't stamp any trees over here, so it's like, you can't tell where land begins and, land and sky begin, like that Forrest Gump quote. Okay, if you've seen that movie. But you see, I'm putting this over these trees like this, and doesn't it make it feel like that impression is a little bit more varied and three-dimensional? It's just one print in black, but now, adding this in here, we've layered it on here, so there's various kind of shades of black now, or shades of gray, you might say. Okay, see that right there? Look at that. This is such an easy and effective way to do it, to add an extra special component into it, okay? These are perfect for quotes too. You can stamp a quote right there. When you have sky like that, there's so many different things you can do for that look. One of the things that's kind of cool about photos too, when you get these photo prints made, if you have them, made or printed out at the store, there's so many different things that are made for that size of photograph too, out there. Frames, whatever. You can frame something, and then, I don't know, you have it sit on your shelf for, a couple months or something like that, and then you just do another one. You can kind of put different scenes or whatever into rotation. You don't have to come up with a specialized frame for, some different format of a piece that you've created. These are photo prints, so. See, I'm putting some of these trees right here in the foreground. So doesn't that kind of add to that general atmosphere? Or atmospheric change, you might say. Okay. Now, pigment ink dries a little bit darker than what it looks like when it's been freshly applied, okay? So, you might have to go with another coat, allow it to dry, and then see how it looks, and then go back to it. And then you can go over it and build it up a little bit more if you want to. Okay, so anyways, here's a couple scenes and something to consider here in terms of photo stamping, all right? I mean, you can embellish these too. You can do whatever you want on them. I wouldn't do it with pigment inks unless you plan on embossing it. You can do it over a dark scene too, or a dark whatever background. And then maybe you do, like Brilliance ink, Moonlight White over the top of it, so you have light on dark. There's all kinds of different possibilities, that you can do. But anyways, I'll have a link in my description section below this video where you can download. I have about 20 cloud prints. You bring up the cloud one you want and then just hit the download button. I don't know if you have to be a Flickr member. You can just get a free membership too for that. Or just like I said, there's all kinds of other prints out there. Or you can go out and you can take photographs yourself too. Sometimes when people get into this type of thing, they say they look at the sky differently now, in terms of stamping out scenes or utilizing the sky for their stamping purposes, and it's really fun. Okay, so anyway, I hope this kind of expands this range of idea notions that you might have for these pieces and different ways to use them. All kinds of different things you can do. And I don't know, add shimmery types of little effects with glitter or something or spray the whole thing with a glitter, something like this. You can spray it with a, the bleed-proof white and have this snowing if you want to, or something like that. There's all kinds of different things you can do on this type of format, okay? Except, regular pigment inks drying. They just never do. I can come back to it 5 days later and just wipe it right off, and it just wipes right off. Okay, so if you have any questions or whatnot, comments, please comment below. If you like this video, please click the like button. And as always, thank you for tuning into the Stampscapes channel.